So, as I was putting together this message, God began to allow me to get hit over and over again to the point where I've been sitting on this particular message for about a week or so because He allowed me to experience certain situations which challenged me on my own level of emotional maturity. And far too often, whether we do it in private or whether we get in front of these phones and post on social media, we have all the right things to say and we have all the great advice. But a lot of times, as the saying goes, it truly is easier said than done. It truly is easier to teach rather than practice what you teach. And if you grew up in a black household, you know far too well how some of our parents were quick to say, do as I say, but not as I do. But whether you are an adult or a child, many of us are learning by what you're doing versus what you're saying. So all that is to say is, when it comes to emotional maturity, you need to be honest with your communication, and you don't need to be double-minded. And this is why. In Matthew 5:37, it says, "But let your communication be yes is yes, and no is no. For whatsoever is more than these comes of evil." So in a nutshell, God is telling us to say what you mean and mean what you say. If you watch the first video, I gave the example of the woman who wants to play games and say, don't ever call me anymore. Don't reach out to me, all the while secretly hoping that when she ends that conversation, that whosoever she's dealing with is actually going to call them again and succumb to her behavior, to reward her for her bad behavior. No, you said don't call. So when you sitting there looking at your phone, 5 minutes has gone by, 15 minutes has gone by, a day has gone by, 3 days has gone by, or whatever the case may be, it would behoove you not to think that that person did anything wrong by not reaching out when you out of your own mouth said to not reach out. So we've got to stop playing these mind games, because in 1 Corinthians 13:11 it says, "When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things." And when I looked in the Strong's Concordance at the word childish, it was defined as simple-minded, an immature person, one who is unlearned. And the last scripture that I wanted to touch on is James 1, verses 6-8, which says, "But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavers is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways." And when I looked up double-minded, it was defined as two-spirited, vacillating. And I also had to look up that because I wasn't familiar with that word. And vacillating is defined as to alternate or waver between different opinions or actions, indecisiveness, or being uncertain. And so This is to encourage you as well as myself, because this was a hard pill to swallow, dealing with researching this lesson and God allowing me to go through certain situations and even see the flaws in myself. When it comes to double-mindedness, the Lord said don't expect anything of him. So if you are one of those women who are out here saying, I don't want to be in a relationship, I don't want to love anymore, yet are still entertaining the idea, not only the idea of dating, but are maybe even currently dating someone who even told you that they're not trying to be in a relationship. Yet you allowed yourself to be in that situation, secretly hoping and praying that maybe one day their mind or their heart would change. Well, because of your double-mindedness and your dishonesty and lack of emotional maturity to be able to effectively communicate, hey, I need to take some time to work on myself. I actually do want to be loved. I actually do want to be in a relationship, but I'm not in a place to do so. Don't expect to receive the goodness of the Lord if you are battling with double-mindedness and then participating in certain things that you know could eventually hurt you. You cannot get into a relationship with someone who has probably and hopefully told you that they don't want to be in a relationship, and then hope that that person one day would change. And when they do not, you're butthurt, sorrowful. You've given up hope of ever finding true love, of ever being married, because you made the decision to be dishonest with yourself. And so I hope this message helps someone, because this life is hard. And a lot of the times it's hard because relationships take work, whether that's with your friends, your family, your co-workers. And they take work because it takes the ability of both people not only being emotionally mature and communicating honestly, but also being willing to submit to one another. Because it's not always going to be your way and it's not always going to be their way. But there has to be a compromise, a healthy compromise, in order for these things to work. Y'all have a blessed day and a blessed night.